disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So Tucker Carlson, the famous former Fox News host that now does his own Tucker Carlson network and seems to be the voice of reason when it comes to accurate journalism and giving a outsider's perspective, which I never thought in this day and age Tucker Carlson would be that person, but he seems to be, considering his, unique stance reporting when it comes to January 6th. He was holding accountable with Ukraine. He was holding accountable when it came to the mandates. He was the one that covered the trucker convoy. He was the one that covered about Russiagate. He was correct about Syria, and so on and so forth. So Tucker Carlson's been trending here in Canada for a particular reason, because Tucker Carlson has made statements about how he has this vision or plan to liberate us in Canada here from the tirades of Justin Trudeau. And before I made statements about saying, the last time the United States tried to liberate countries, it didn't look so well. So I told them, to F off and, leave us to the liberation. I think it's the people's responsibility of said country to decide the fate of their country. But I had to take notice of this because what he says here in a phone call to the Parliament building, yes, Tucker Carlson actually called Parliament to notify them that United States journalist is planning to liberate us fellow citizens here in Canada. And he does it in the most kind of respectful way possible because, United States kind of has that notion, kind of has that reputation of, we're going to seek, we're going to conquer, we're going to destroy. But Tucker Carlson puts it in a different perspective, and I think this is spot on, well done. So listen to his phone call here, speaking to the Parliament building. He just leaves a voicemail because they didn't want to actually talk to him, being who Tucker Carlson is and who he represents. But listen how this goes.
Thank you for your call. You have reached the media line. For all urgent requests, please send your request by email. Merci pour votre appel. Vous avez atteint la ligne médiatique. Merci beaucoup.
Yes, hi. I couldn't understand the French part, but it's Tucker Carlson calling from the United States. And I'd be grateful if you pass a message on to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. We are coming to liberate Canada. We are coming to liberate Canada. And we'll be there soon. Merci.
I don't know why, but him ending with merci. It's so perfect. It's so perfect. And the thing I love about this is that it's not like, it's not like a threatening call. It's not like, being held to the phone call and saying we're going to come and kick your ass and everything's going to go down and we're going to take over and conquer. No, Tucker Carlson is just saying, hey, we're going to come and help the Canadian citizens here that have been oppressed, have been terrorized, have been oppressed by the regime of Justin Trudeau. We're going to aid to that function, and you probably should, be aware of that. Okay? Merci. That was beautiful, though. And for us Canadians here that are watching this and Canadians that have seen this already, maybe you're probably scratching your head going, why exactly is Tucker Carlson saying that he's going to storm into Canada and liberate? Well, let's remind people that Tucker Carlson was one of the only few journalists out there that were covering the trucker convoy when it came to the mandates, the protesting, the violence that erupted with the Ottawa police cracking the heads of our own citizens when Justin Trudeau announced the Emergency Powers Act to, again, annihilate after their own citizens for peaceful protesting. That's when people realized the perspective of what was going on here in Canada. We have kind of the reputation of being the nice neighbors, the Ned Flanders of countries, Oakley dokley. But then you really saw how our government operates, how awful and disgusting and scandalous the administration of Justin Trudeau is, and how devious the parliamentarian is. not even just with the trucker convoy, but we've seen the SNC-Lavalin scandal. We have seen the We Day scandal. We have seen the money embezzlement. We have seen foreign affairs, how there's money transfer between that. We have seen all sorts of things. We've even seen the parliamentarian applaud a Nazi, an actual mass murdering Nazi, in the hopes of defending Ukraine, but not defending Canadians. So just kind of to put that in perspective, but here's Tucker Carlson on his show on X, formerly known as Twitter, directly speaking on why he made that phone call and why this is so important. Take a listen.
Trudeau is such a metrosexual buffoon, always dressing up in little costumes, that it's almost impossible, or it was almost impossible, to think of him as an authoritarian dictator. You can't take him seriously enough to be afraid of him. But then you probably don't live in Canada. But all of that began to change 2 winters ago. This was the height of the COVID lockdowns, and Canada had some of the most restrictive COVID regulations in the world. Among them was a vax mandate. The people who told you it was your body, your choice didn't believe that at all. All of a sudden, they told you, you must take the shot or you can't participate in life. You can't go anywhere, you can't work. Well, there is at least one group of Canadians with testosterone levels sufficient to question an order like that, and they turned out to be long-haul truckers. And they descended on Canadian cities in January of 2022 to make their voices heard, as they say on the news, to make their voices heard. But they were not greeted in the way that other groups who want to make their voices heard are greeted, as heroes. No. They were greeted with derision in the Canadian media, which effectively is an arm of the Trudeau administration, and by our media, which is effectively an arm of the Democratic Party. Almost nobody took their side. But what's interesting...
They were called Nazis. They were called white supremacists. They were called misogynists. They were called xenophobic. They were called every name of the book. Every name of the book. And again, this was a year after when the pandemic started, and Justin Trudeau and the government applauded truckers for continuing on to deliver groceries and delivering car parts and doing their trucking job during this time. They applauded them. They thanked them as a first response to this pandemic because, as you know, the world was locked down. We were told to stay at home. We were told not to go outside, not to interact with anybody. And we needed the essential workers to still continue on. And one of those essential workers were truckers. And then all of a sudden, truckers said, enough is enough. We got to stop this madness because the mandates, proven through scientific studies, through all the medical analysis, have proven that it was not effective enough when it came to the pandemic, when it came to COVID. But I can tell you they're very safe and effective according to YouTube science.
Interesting is how reasonable their demands were. Listen to us. Hey, Canada, maybe forcing people to take an untested medicine is not a good idea. They didn't threaten violence. They weren't violent. They were the core of the Canadian middle class, which is almost extinct at this point.
And the other thing, too, was how they covered the truckers. They referred to them as anti-vaxxers. But what the media failed to tell you, and what is so important about that trucker convoy, about the Freedom Convoy, was majority of the truckers were vaccinated. They were vaccinated. But because they changed the regulations on what determines as vaccinated, they changed the goalpost from 1 shot to 2 shot to 4 or 5 now to be condemned fully vaccinated. They deemed the truckers who were already fully vaccinated to anti-vaxxers because they're not willing to step up and be in line for the pharmaceutical agenda. So they were calling this out, and they were called anti-vaxxers, even though majority of the truckers have already been vaccinated. And they failed to tell you that for obvious reasons. Again, fear-monger, to paranoid, to scare people, to cause hate and division among Canadians. And this was seen globally, worldwide.
But what was so telling, and should really have been foreshadowing of what came later, was Justin Trudeau's reaction to the Canadian truckers, to the trucker convoy. He refused to speak to them. Here he's explaining why.
Is there a reason that you can give as for why you will not discuss or have any negotiations with this particular group?
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I've also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect, not just of science, but
By the way, when Justin Trudeau says he attended Black Lives Matter as a protest that he endorses, all that means is that he walked out, did a PR photography stunt, and then walked away. He didn't actually do anything for decreasing the racial tensions of countries. He didn't actually invoke any policies that would actually eliminate the racial divide. He didn't do any of that. Politicians that attend rallies are PR stunts. That's all they do. They walk in, click, couple photographs, and walk away. That was all Justin Trudeau was doing. Just like when he came up with the idea of the Truth and Reconciliation Day, you know, a day that we're supposed to honor the Indigenous Native Americans and Native Canadians that have died and sacrificed over history and how we continue to oppress them. That was supposed to be the day that we're supposed to, like, you know, reflect on it and maybe actually do something about it. No, Justin Trudeau took that as, hey, we'll make this a federal holiday so I can jet set to some Caribbean island for my family vacation. And you guys back here at home have to feel sad about the stuff that I did. We have to reflect on the fact that Justin Trudeau is such a absolute goddamn garbage prime minister. That's our truth and reconciliation.
of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand.
And again, they don't tell you this right off the bat. They don't tell you right off the bat as the mandate protest was coming around that these are people that were vaccinated, but they're so goddamn disgusted by the fact that we have been furthering this divide as this pandemic continues on. It has been a roller coaster. It's affected small businesses. It's affected family relationships. It's affected everything, economically, physically, mentally. Suicide rates and opioid use was skyrocketing at the time. It's still continuing to do so. And none of this ever got addressed. None of it ever got addressed. But what got addressed was the fact that truckers who were hailed, victors at the start of the pandemic, all of a sudden became vicious Nazi, psychopathic, warmongering, racist, xenophobic, homophobic, violent people, radicals of the Trump domain. Yes, they even claimed Canadian truckers as part of the MAGA movement. Just to throw that tactic in there.
This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
So people who are paying close attention learned a lot from that clip. First, here is a guy, Justin Trudeau, who will say literally anything. He will say the opposite of what is true with a smile on his face. His heart rate won't rise a bit. He's a sociopath. Here is also a person who has no regard, in fact, contempt for democracy. This is the elected leader of a so-called democracy who refuses to even listen to criticism of his policies.
Well, let's not forget that when Tucker Carlson says elected, that's a delightful term. You can hear the bit of sarcasm to that. When Justin Trudeau was elected, yes, technically the Canadian populace voted him and the Liberal Party into office. But where did Justin Trudeau actually come from? He is the son of former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau from back in the day. Yes, he is kind of the dynasty here in Canada, much like the Clintons and the Bushes, the Obamas, and other political families that have erected themselves as the hierarch. But Justin Trudeau, and I know this because Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum even discussed this. Justin Trudeau was handpicked and selected and indoctrinated to take over Canada as part of their Young Leaders program. So this idea that Justin Trudeau is this average Canadian that built himself up, that built up this reputation, happens to be part of a political dynasty and then just randomly got elected. No, it was personally fixated by the World Economic Forum that we had Justin Trudeau at the reins of the Liberal Party, and people were manipulated into voting him in, thinking that this guy was going to be on your side, being your best friend and saying the right words. But then, just like the Obamas, just like any other politician, they swindle you and give you crap. They suck you in and then they sell you a lemon. Actually, we'd be probably better off with a lemon. A lemon's actually something, considering what we have right now.
So, in fact, he's not a Democratic leader. He's an authoritarian. And that became very clear shortly after that was shot. At least 4 Canadian truckers went to jail. Now, what did they go to jail for? What did they do exactly? Well, to this day, no one can really say, and they're still in jail. Watch the Canadian media's description of that specific case. And as you listen to what we're about to show you, ask yourself, did they tell me anything real, or was every single word a lie spoken at the behest of the ruling party of Canada? This is State Media Exhibit A. Watch this.
According to newly unsealed court documents, RCMP believe 4 men accused of plotting to kill Mounties at the Kitz border blockade were being given orders by an outside leadership group. The names of the people in that group have been redacted from the report as they are part of an active investigation. The newly released records involve transcriptions of phone calls between the 4 charged with conspiracy to commit murder, Anthony Olenek, Chris Lysak, Jerry Morin, and Chris Carbert, and the unidentified leadership group. The documents state the leadership wanted more than just vaccine mandates lifted, but also the elimination of the professional political class. It also alleges Olenek, Lysak, Morin, and Carbert.
Whoa. I love, what is this? This is CTV, right? Yeah, CTV News. I love how they throw that in there. The professional political class. This is like modern day feudalism. This is like modern day dark ages that I've heard about in history. That, you know, us plebes don't know how the world operates, and that's why we're poor. We're poor because of ourselves, and that's why we have to, you know, remain in the village, work 9 to 5 for shitty hours and shitty pay to keep the hierarchy afloat, while the professional elitists, you know, the mastermind criminals that can get away with anything because they have the money and gonads to do so, are able to just walk free because they're professional. They were chosen to be the hierarchy. They were chosen to be the upper class. And as the chosen people, it is their duty to maintain the further divide between the hierarchy and the plebes. It is their fundamental duty to keep that separated as much as possible and remain keeping oppressing on working class people. That is their fundamental duty, and that's why they're the chosen professionals. That's why Justin Trudeau is such an effective leader, according to the World Economic Forum, according to the WHO, according to these multi-international conglomerates, BlackRock, Vanguard, all these other business tycoons that have taken over countries. As the movie from 1974 Network pointed out, there is no countries, there's just companies.
For months and stockpiled firearms at Olenek's property near Claire's home while taking orders from an unidentified group. The documents reveal in February, Mounties seized more than 36,000 rounds of ammunition, 2 pipe bombs, gas masks, camouflage, and tactical gear from the property. Other intercepted calls from the 4 men's cell phones refer to more potential weapons coming from a second stockpile in Nanton, as well as a growing tension between those protesting in Kitz and the leadership group. In February,
Now, the reason I'm laughing at this and find this so ridiculous, not that, you know, this does sound terrifying. Not that, you know, if you saw this firsthand and didn't know anything about the backstories of what's going on, it does sound terrifying that a couple of men have, you know, this amount of ammunition and pipe bombs and, you know, manifestos on taking down the government, taking down, you know, all these political leaders and the professional class. It does sound horrific, but when I hear stuff like this, I'm reminded of, you know, the federal stunts that we have seen erected in the past, like January 6th, or, you know, the undercover feds that went to that LGBTQ pride parade in, I think it was Idaho or Iowa. I don't know what it was, but you know, they were wearing the mask and they were armed up to the teeth and they had all this ammunition. Then you realize that it was a complete stunt. So I laugh at this, thinking that this is definitely had to be some sort of FBI, CIA insider, you know, impersonation into this. There had to be some sort of informant conglomerating this all together. To me, this doesn't sound like a normal individual just all of a sudden got 3 other people to come together and say, hey, give us all your guns. We'll collect them into my barn, and then we'll go and storm Canada and raise havoc. Like, it doesn't seem like a normal interaction with Canadian civilians. This had to be something orchestrated by a higher up.
Lysak, Mooring, Carbert, and 9 others were arrested after RCMP uncovered a cache of weapons in Kitz. Olenek is also charged with making and possessing an explosive device, and Lysak faces a charge of uttering threats.
So parse what you just heard carefully. Again, that's state media in Canada. So here are 4 guys, working class guys, live in rural areas, and they've got a firearm stockpile. Right. They probably don't have a lot more between the 4 of them than your average farmer does in the state of Nebraska or the state of Maine or the state of Oregon or anywhere else far from a big city. They're hunters, and so they have guns. Now, the pipe bomb is a very specific question. What's a pipe bomb? We don't know, and neither does the media organization reporting it. But critically, they don't tell you anything about this outside group that's supposedly coordinating them. The point of that news report was not to inform you, but to scare the crap out of you and make those 4 people who are now in jail seem like scary threats to Canada. Mission accomplished.
That's so true. Did you notice in that entire statement that CTV reported, they did not mention this outsider group. They didn't mention any information regarding to their connections to this informant group. They didn't say anything. But they personally handpicked these individuals. They know them by name. They know where they live. They know how they operate. And they arrested them on the suspicion of connecting conspiracy to this organization. But they didn't look into the organization. You think that would be your job as a journalist? You're saying that, you know, 4 Canadians are connected to this highly well-organized, established terror group, and you didn't look into this organization? You didn't find out details about that? Nope. Didn't bother with it. And that's, as Tucker Carlson said, that's the reason for it, is to scare you. It's to scare the idea of you that your friends, your families, and neighbors are your true enemies and not the establishment that has been terrorizing you nonstop since the start of the pandemic and even before then. It's all a tactic.
Accomplished. So what you have in a country like Canada, where you have an authoritarian government that's taken away civil liberties, a dying middle class, and no media, is you have almost nobody pushing back against the lies. There is maybe one news organization left in Canada that asks very simple questions of the people who run the country. Why are you doing this? Can you answer the question? That's Rebel News. Watch one of their reporters try to ask Krista Freeland, who's the finance minister of Canada, spent many years in Washington, D.C., known to many people who lived in D.C. as a kind of low IQ functionary. She now has power, and she does not want to answer any questions from the one independent media organization remaining in Canada. Watch what happens when a reporter tries to get her to answer the question.
Ms. Freeland, how come the IRGC is not a terrorist group? Why is your government supporting Islamo-Nationalism? What? Excuse me. What are you doing?
You're under arrest for assault.
Sir,
why are you pushing me? You're under arrest for assault.
Who are you?
You're under arrest for assault.
Police. Police, you're under arrest. How am I under arrest? You bumped into me. You pushed into me. You bumped. I was just scrubbing. I got my credentials here, and you just bumped into me.
Can I have the microphone? Can I have the microphone? Can I have the microphone? Can you give?
I'm not officer.
So that is the arrest, the false arrest of David Menzies. We reported here on this channel previously of the Rebel News reporter that, you know, was arrested on the false tense of assault, apparently to this officer who actually assaulted the journalist because the journalist was asking Chrystia Freeland a question. So this is kind of the havoc of what's happening here in Canada. And this is why Tucker Carlson has taken notice. Unlike any other person in the mainstream media, especially here in Canada, in the United States, and anywhere around the world, because the entire media establishment, yes, it's in other countries. Yes, they operate maybe slightly different standards. But when you're an establishment media organization, you're playing to one particular person. You're playing to the corporate estate. You're not playing to the viewers. You're not playing to your audience. You're not informing people. You're advertisers. You are stenographers, the establishment class. You are there to be the soundboard, projecting what you hear from the establishment and then spewing that out to the rest of the masses. That is the entire that's the entire operations of the corporate media. And so this is what they do to independent journalists who actually want to function as journalists. This is what they do to Dave Menzies. This is what they're doing to Julian Assange when they have him in captivity and trying to extradite him. This is what they've done to other journalists and reporters. This is what they've done to independent organizations. That's why they're increasing censorship. It's just a havoc and a half. It is just a motherload of hell that has opposed on us. And Justin Trudeau is not the only person sole responsible for this. Chrystia Freeland, also from the WEF, also a deep state insider. The liberal establishment, the conservatives, like the entire political structure has just been diluted into this authoritarian takeover by globalists. And that is why Tucker Carlson and much other Americans are responding to what's happening in Canada and saying that we need to come together. So when I said in the past that America needs to back off, I want to redact that statement and say that America should be encouraged to look into this. America should be encouraged to help us out. I think we, as working class people, regardless of what country you're in, regardless of what stance you're in, we all need to come together, because if it's not happening in your country, it's going to happen eventually. Because what you're seeing in Canada is basically the prelude into what's happening also in the UK, what's happening in Australia, what's happening in the Netherlands, what's happening in other nations. And we're seeing protests, and we're seeing people stand up and rise against the authoritarian state, but they're being bombarded by the tactics of the globalist force. And that's why we need more people, more working class people, to stand united against the globalist attacks. That is what we need. And I give props and an absolute salute to Tucker Carlson for being the only journalist to actually call this out, for being the actual journalist to be a part of this. And this is why Tucker Carlson still continues to be, even if he's not on network television, even if he's nowhere to on any major platform and doing a show on social media, is still the #1 journalist going. This is why people tune in every single time to Tucker Carlson. They didn't fire him because of low ratings. They fired him because Tucker Carlson is the last hope of a reasonable voice when it comes to journalism. And that's why it comes down to us regular Joes in, shoestring podcasts like I'm doing here, to give you the real scoop, to give you the real information. So kudos to Tucker Carlson. I salute this. I am, ready to take down this garbage totalitarian establishment force. That's even, like I said, it's larger than Trudeau. It's the entire political structure that has just been dominated over by a globalist regime. And we need a lot of people out there. Like, the Freedom Convoy was definitely a step in the right direction. The Freedom Convoy really showed that Canadians can unite together. They can drop their identity crap. They can drop down their differences and come together in solitude to fight against the true oppressors of this country. And I have a lot of hope for Canada. I hope there's a lot of hope for Canada. I just hope that people can wake up to this. I don't know what's going to take for more people to wake up, but I hope people are realizing that we can't take this anymore. And the worst is yet to come. That's the scary part. That's the scary part of this. You think this is the worst that Canada could do. The worst is yet to come. And if we don't start doing something now, it possibly may be too late.